When I talk about war games to people who aren't into board gaming at all, I think they think some version of this is what I am playing. And when I try to explain to them exactly what I'm doing, why I enjoy this genre, despite the fact that I'm not particularly drawn to military conflicts in general, and mostly don't approach games by an interest in the historical period, I think of 5 games and talk about 5 games that have really defined my relationship to wargaming in recent years. And I'm going to briefly touch on these games here in what I hope is a pretty short video. Just a note of caution, I'm not in any way, shape, or form claiming that these are genre-defining games for the wargame genre as a whole. I'm talking about my relationship to wargaming, and especially my relationship to wargaming in recent years, when I have kind of re-emerged in the board game world after a period of time where I wasn't really playing board games at all. So these are 5 games that really define the wargaming genre for me. And coming in at number 5 is Space Empires 4X by Jim Crone, designer, GMT. I've got the second printing of it here from 2011. This game really, for me, brought me back to board gaming. It came out, when I got it, when it came out, it coincided with the time when I was able to have a little bit more free time, because basically it was between kids, between little kids. And as such, it being a space sci-fi war game where there aren't too many, and that's kind of one of my favorite sweet spots for gaming, the fact that it is old school in feel, even though it's a young design. There are production pads that you use to upgrade your ships, and the wargame mechanics are pretty basic, but the feel of the game, I think for me, mixes old and new. The mounted map I really liked, and I'm not opening the box for you because I'm trying to keep this short, as I said, but it just ticked off a number of boxes for me that brought me back into board gaming, and where I've basically stayed even through the birth of my second child, and just kind of maintained a presence in my life in a way that it had vanished before Space Empires was there. Sorry about that, to bring me back in. So for that reason, for me, Space Empires 4X is number 5 on the list of genre-defining war games. And coming in at number 4 is the only coin game I have. As we look here at the credits, I will say that I have not played this game very much, and when I have played it as solo, using the bots available, it's more of it almost feels like a learning experience, that I'm going along for the ride than actually playing the game. And I feel that that's because really, this is such a rich design, and it's not a solo design, although I absolutely appreciate having the solo bots in this type of system, and that's really why I got it, that I need to experience it more fully as a multiplayer game, as it really was designed for. This period of history is really the only kind of historical period that will draw me to a game because of the history. As if you watch my channel, you know that I don't typically play games because of the historical period. I'm drawn to them for the various mechanics, and this kind of combines both the mechanical interest for me in the coin system and the period of history that I know the most about and am the most sort of natively interested in, as it were. It's just a rich game that has expanded my understanding of what the wargame genre can offer, and the three-dimensionality of a game system, not only throwing in the politics and the other types of wargame mechanics, but also the multi-faction aspect to it and the asymmetric experience of the various players in there. So for me, Liberty or Death, I'll admit I need to play it more. I need to play it multiplayer as it was designed, but it is a very important cornerstone of my wargaming experience. That's number 4. And coming in at number 3, a game that I really resisted buying for a long time. Actually, I traded for this, so I never did actually buy it. But I had some difficulty with the subject matter. I was concerned that it would be a little bit too raw for me to experience, but the fact that it came available in a trade and I got it, and I just was sort of really taken aback in a good way as to what the experience of playing this game is. And this too, I have only played using the bot, and it's a little bit easier because it's, there's just 2 factions in it to manage the bot, but it, as you can see, I'm sort of struggling for the words to use to talk about the depth of the design, the emotional experience of playing it, and how much I feel I learn, and my experience, really even just of reading the newspaper, is impacted if I have just played through a game of this. That it has a relationship to the real world in a way that no other game in my collection does, and as such has a very specific and important place in defining what war games are for me, and in trying to explain the richness and depth of the genre to people who, have no concept of what war games actually are. So that is my number 3 game, Labyrinth: The War on Terror. And my number 2 and 1 game, there's a little bit of a cheat here because I've done a video on Ambush already, and I was trying in this video to just touch on really briefly games that I have not done a video on and won't do a video on individually for a variety of reasons. But I can't, of course, leave out Ambush in terms of talking about genre-defining war games for me, because it, along with the number 1 game here, Raid on St. Nazaire, is these 2 together really define my experience of war games, the reason why, for me, the genre offers so much in terms of creating a narrative, a story, a living story. I think of it when I play through these games and I leave them out on my desk, as I do, because there's no way I would ever finish any of them in 1 session or even 2. It's like I look over at my desk and I can see the story taking place there. It's like a little mini movie playing over my desk when I look over and see where what the game state has been left in. And in very different ways, both of these games are the absolute epitome for me of a solo design that allows a story. In Raid, in a sense, I guess it is a little bit more in your mind, because it's not paragraph driven in the same way, or at all, as Ambush is. So it enables a little bit more flexibility, I would say, of narrative and thought about it. But either of these, or both of them, are just the absolute the top of my understanding of what a wargame genre can provide, of what a solitaire design game can be. That's number 2, and number 1, really interchangeable. I've made videos where I talk about the fact that, like in this video, I'm not particularly drawn to military conflict, nor am I really steeped in any particular historical time frame, or that's really not my main interest in gaming, or in my approach to the world. And what my main interest in the world is storytelling and narrative. And in the real world, I'm a book editor, and in the course of my life, what has meant the most to me, outside of people, of course, and relationships with people, are my relationships to books and to stories. And ultimately, that is what draws me to war games. And I want to thank all the viewers who have watched particularly my wargaming videos, but maybe all of them, where mostly what I'm talking about is the experience of the game, the story that is developed through the game's mechanics. And that may be a slightly atypical approach to war games, but as people know, war games are not all one thing, and war gamers are not all one type of people. And I think from the outside it may seem that way, but I know from the people that watch my videos, of course, and from being in the hobby, that that's not the case. So I thank you for watching all my videos, and especially this one, and I'll be back with you again sometime. Thanks for watching.